Oh yeah, what's going on, Game Weepers? This is Eeks, long time no speak, and in this video we're going to go through the 10 most broken champions for patch 12.22 to end the preseason.
But just before we do get into the video, one thing you guys have to do before you get into your next game is to download the Professor app linked in the description, because it allows you to quickly import the best rune page used from the best players in the world on the champion you're picking. You don't have to make the rune page, just one click of a button and bang, you're ready to go. But that's not all, because the app also allows you to scout your opponent, and the app will give you their stats, how well they play their champion, so you can know more about your opponent than they know about themselves. And the app also gives you an in-game overlay, so you can compare your CSing, your kill participation to your rank, or even challenger players like Faker. And there's a reason why 3 million people have downloaded this free application, guys. It's because it works. So get around it in Season 12. Those links are in the description.
Now starting off at number 10, we have Jax from the top lane, and one of the big reasons Jax is just enjoying 12.22 at the moment is, well, he didn't actually get nerfed, and if you think about it, at the end of Season 12, he was one of the strongest top laners, and whether that's because of lethal tempo, synergize this with your passive, and you're one of the highest DPS champs in the game. But in the actual preseason, we do have an interesting addition for Jax, this being Spear of Shojin. This item is unreal for Jax, especially the passive, but your core items are probably still going to be Divine Syndra, followed by Frozen Heart. Now, if you are really snowballing, like I'm talking you're like 10-0 after your Divine Syndra spike, then you can get a Shojin after this. You don't have to go Frozen Heart. It really just depends on the game you're in. So if you're against a lot of attack speed based champions, Frozen Heart has a lot of value. If you're not though, then you can actually just get a Spear of Shojin as your second major item. So that's one of the big reasons why Jax is still incredibly strong, so definitely consider having him in your champion pool for the rest of the preseason and potentially Season 13. Now another champion you want to have in your champion pool, this is Zed, and of course we're talking about Zed in the mid lane. And for Zed in the mid lane, because of all the other changes, right, that I've mentioned in previous videos, so if we think about the Scorch buff, if we think about Zed starting with Longsword and maybe 3 health potions, very few mid laners have that much sustain anymore, especially after the sustain nurse in 12.14. If we think about the energy buff to his Shadow Slash, this going down by 10 a few patches ago, this helps him out so much as well. But there's also an interesting addition for Zed in the preseason, a bit like the Jax build we talked about, so Shojin coming in. We're talking about Ravenous Hydra Zed, and we will talk about some of the wackiest builds, guys, in tomorrow's video, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on all that juicy information. And yeah, Ravenous Hydra on Zed, if you want to get this as your first item, or after your Eclipse or Prowler's Core or Dustblade, whatever lethality mythic you decide to go, it's actually very deadly because of the new passive they put into this, even though it did actually get nerfed, so the cost has gone up by 100 gold, and the actual damage you get from the passive, this is down a little bit, but it's still incredibly good. For Zed as well, this also helps with your wave clear, even though your wave clear is still good, don't get me wrong, without Hydra and the Tiamat passive, the cleave passive. But what I'm really getting at here is that you can actually save some of your abilities. You can actually just auto attack and E waves now. You can save your Q, so if you do get jumped on while you're clearing a wave, you easily have enough power to kill that champion jumping on you, and it just makes your shove and roam assassin playstyle even deadlier. Now moving on, number 8 on the countdown, this is Karthus in the jungle. And for Karthus to be an S+ tier champion in Master and above in career, so all these champions, guys, and these stats are actually taken from high elo career, where these players will get the most out of the champions. So it's kind of like a bigger representation of the actual meta, rather than me going down to like all ranks and talking about Master Yi, for example. But yeah, Karthus is one of these champions in high relos who is really enjoying life. And I think one of the big reasons why is because of how easy it is now to clear the jungle, especially because of the Krugs change. So because when the big Krug dies, it just goes into the little Krugs, right? There's not an extra 2 medium Krugs. So area of effect junglers like Karthus with his late waste, with his defile, love this. You clear Krugs so quickly, and it accelerates your clear speed. You have one of the fastest full clears in the game. I mean, you kind of did before, but now it's even better. So Karthus, because of his insane clear speed, because of the new jungle changes, he is number 8. Now moving on to number 7 on the countdown, just ahead of Karthus, we're staying in the jungle here. So if you don't want to play a magic damage dealing jungler, then you have to pick Kindred. Now one of the reasons Kindred is so powerful at the moment, especially in higher relos, is because you actually just have more time, if you think about it, to mess with the enemy jungler. Because the Scuttlecrab spawn has been pushed back to 3 minutes 30, there is a bigger opportunity for you to get in their face and kill them. Because lots of people now will think, oh my goodness, like Crab isn't spawning until 3:30, they will just full clear. And full clearing, don't get me wrong, is like good because you get level 4 and you get like a guaranteed 900 or so gold under your belt, but it does mean that you can get hit at any camp by a strong early game jungler like Kindred, especially when you're running something like Press the Attack, right? She can get in your face, she can disrupt your clear, and I understand that when you do invade and take enemy camps, you're not getting as much from them these days, but the point is Kindred just has more opportunity now, probably because players, like I said, they're just in that full clearing mindset, so they don't expect that invade. So Kindred in 12.22, if you want to try to win a game and snowball it 1v9 it out of control, she's definitely one of the better jungle picks. Now, number 6 on the countdown, we're heading back to the top lane here. So we talked about Jax earlier, who actually does very well into this champion, this being Darius. And I don't really think we have to talk too much about Darius here because we all know how good he was, right, towards the end of Season 12. Not much has really changed for the preseason so far. He's still an absolute beast in the top lane in terms of the DPS, the Conqueror stacking, the low W cooldown. I've mentioned this so many times before. And as far as the items go, I mean, not really much has changed for Darius. You can see that in some games, people are building Turbo Chem Tag because the passive, the movement speed, right, means that it's really hard for you to get kited. I mean, the movement speed you're getting from Deadman's, even the Stride Breaker, right, with the slow, it really stops enemy champions from kiting you, which again, is just your big weakness. But because Darius still has all of his strengths, even though some champions might have been improved a little bit. So if we think about Jax, right, if we think about other top laners who can make use of Ravenous Hydra, and we might even get into a couple of these very soon, Darius is still very innately strong. He has to be mentioned here. Now, coming in at number 5 on the countdown, and guess what? We are talking about, guys, one of these champions who can abuse Ravenous Hydra. This is Camille. And Camille, before the Ravenous Hydra change, you were building it. Now it's even better, even after the nerfs. This has made Camille arguably the best champion in the game and probably the best top laner. You can see these stats, I mean, with this rune page, in 75 matches in high reload, a 68% win rate. And with this core setup of Divine Syndra and then Ravenous Hydra, you can check any rank in the game. So this isn't even just for high reloads. I know it says here a 72.5% win rate. This will easily be above probably like 55% across every single rank. It is just outright broken, and for Camille, the cleave passive is so valuable, kind of like I mentioned for Zed, because of the wave clear it gives you. Camille's wave clear is honestly just horrifically bad until she gets Hydra, so this really helps you out. Just remember, guys, if you are playing Camille, try to play around your passive, and remember that your hook shot, without it, you are very killable. So do be a little bit careful if the enemy jungler is missing, or if you're against something like a Darius or Jax who can stop your hook shot, be very careful about just using it. Now, moving on to number 4 on the countdown, guys, the first of 2 AD carries here. Now, this one is Caitlyn. And because Caitlyn was very strong towards the end of Season 12, right? Because really what we're talking about here is the buff to Caitlyn that kind of came in towards the end of Season 12 to her passive damage, the headshot damage. This made her stronger. And because the bot lane at the moment, well, there aren't really that many strong AD carries. And because Caitlyn, you're one of the strongest lane bullies, you can easily win lane and just get out of it and snowball. But to be honest, Caitlyn is actually very difficult to play in lower elos, and that's because people just don't understand how to play this champion at the highest level. And also because, well, here's the dilemma. If you do die once on Caitlyn, because the whole goal is just to like stomp lane, right, and then snowball across the map, getting Rift Heralds, getting top tower, getting mid tower eventually, that's how you win a game. So if you die once, it just stuffs up your whole rhythm. Caitlyn is a champion who has to be ahead. You're not picking her to scale because you would pick something like a Jinx or Twitch or Cogball. You're happy to lose lane. So you have to know how to win lane, how to pressure minions, how to harass the enemy champions, how to use your abilities together, how to synergize, harmonize them, and we can teach you how to do just that on our website. So once again, make sure you check that out. And as far as this rune page goes, I know it's recommending cut down here, which is kind of good, but it's really recommended if you do start longsword and 3 health potions. So if you start with a D-blade, take coup de grace. This will just be better. Now, speaking of that other AD carry, who's a little better statistically than Caitlyn, this is Samira. And for the AD carry position, guys, and bot lane, there aren't really like many changes to talk about, right? Like when you look at this page for me, so as far as the runes, skill priority, the items at the bottom, the summoner spells, everything is really still the same. So because Samira hasn't been nerfed, you know, in the preseason thus far, she is still one of the Summoner's Rift powerhouses. Because of those changes that came in earlier to Season 12 that really buffed your scaling, so to your Q's damage and your attack damage per level, these mean that honestly, if you do get going in the early game, like if you get snowballing, if you get a few kills during the laning phase, you become the biggest champion on the Rift. And honestly, I might even argue that you become the best snowballing champion because of the scaling you now have on top of that. So Samira, especially if you're against like projectile or maybe skill shot based AD carries or even bot lanes, she is an unreal pick and a great champion to have up your sleeve for the preseason. Now, coming in at number 2, this is a champion who is in the bot lane, but this is a support, and this is Blitzcrank. And in high reloads, you can see that Blitzcrank, I mean, I know this is only from 14 matches, but trust me when I say this, he has over like a 52-53% win rate in career high elo. And lots of you are probably thinking, but didn't Blitz get kind of like heavily nerfed in terms of his base HP, right? In terms of his base armor? For sure he did. His early game has become weaker in the sense that he is squishier, but his damage from the rocket grab is still 100. If you guys remember that buff earlier in Season 12, they buffed Blitzcrank's Q damage. So at level 1, so rank 1 point in it, does 100 damage. This is huge. Like if you land this, you are still burning flashes. You are still probably killing enemy champions. Also your ultimate, the static field damage, they also buffed in that same patch. That is still there. So the actual one-shot potential Blitzcrank has, he is still as deadly as he has ever been. Even if they did nerf the rocket grab damage from rank 2 onwards, so once you do actually level up your Q, it deals less and less damage, but it's still easily enough. So Blitzcrank is on this countdown for those reasons. Kind of interesting here as well how these Koreans are running Revitalize to really help your passive, because your passive shield did actually get nerfed. So this helps you out a little bit. And just remember guys, if you are into ranged bot lanes, please take Glacial Augment and Hex Flash. The slow is so useful because it means the enemy champions can't kite you out, and Hex Flash, if you can burn their flashes early on, the Hex Flash once you get onto them. GG, well played. But the number one champion guys for the preseason, I honestly think she's just head and shoulders, and we ain't talking the shampoo, above everybody else. Sorry, that was really bad. But yeah, this champion is Syndra. So for Syndra, because of the changes towards the end of season 12, right? So the new passive you've got in terms of your splinter stacking, empowering your basic abilities. So your Q, your W, your E. I think really the two big changes there are your Q, you get 2 charges of it, and of course your E's radius. This being 90 degrees, I mean, how is this even still 90 degrees? I think this has to be nerfed. I just think it's way too noob friendly. That might sound like a little toxic, but again, it just is, right? Like it just makes it way too easy to land, and there's just little counterplay to it. Like if you're fighting in one of the rivers, right, around Dragon or Baron, you're just going to get hit by Syndra's E no matter what. So your spacing has to be so clean, and for people in lower elo, yeah, it's just really, really hard to navigate around. But anyway, Syndra here, the rune page you can see, you can take Airy, you can take First Strike. If you know you're into a shorter range champion, First Strike, you're going to get so much gold, and because you are really like more of a scaling champion these days, this is going to help you get to Ludens, Source Shoe, Shadow Flame, the full magic penetration setup, right? And of course, we still have that ultimate buff in the game where you execute champions below 15% max HP. So Syndra, guys, is the number one champion for 12-22 and at the moment for the preseason, so I'd highly recommend playing her because I still think she'll be broken even if she does get nerfed, just because of how good her kit is. So those are the 10 most broken champions, yes, for the preseason, guys. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like down below, and for our future season 12 content, we will be back to uploading daily videos. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and of course, any questions, any thoughts on the champions and info we'll talk about, leave them down below. And until tomorrow's preseason upload on the 10 craziest builds, this has been peace.